So today, I'm going to be reviewing Matt DiMaio's video, which has 6.8 million views at the time of recording this video. And I'd love to chip in with my own study experience becoming a pharmacist and a doctor, also coaching other students succeed in their own studies. And let's dive right into this.
How to remember information that you read from a textbook. Now, I covered this at the end of last week's class, but I want to go over it again pretty quick. And it's a lot easier than you might think. Now, the way most people normally try to read a textbook is they start at the first page of the chapter and they read to the last page of the chapter, and that's their approach. They read a textbook the same way they read a novel.
Oh my god, just want to stop here and say, I don't think I've ever finished reading a textbook from top to bottom or from beginning to end. I usually just either Google, or I'm not sure how you do it. Please comment below before he says anything else.
Stay in your head. So I'm going to show you a few things that you can do to be able to read any kind of a textbook or any kind of a manual, especially if you are preparing for an exam. This is going to be life-changing when you understand this approach. So, the first thing that you do is you simply flip through, and I'm going to abbreviate that, each page.
Okay, before he goes any further, I think what he's going to do is to teach us the SQ3R method, which, if you don't know already, is the survey, question, read, recall, and review method. And we'll see if we unfold like that. This flipping through stage that he's talking about seems to be the survey stage that we typically talk about in this SQ3R method. But let's keep going.
What you're going to do is you are simply going to take the beginning of the chapter and you're going to turn page after page after page, and you're just going to look to see what's on each page. You're not going to read anything. You are just going to look at what the pictures are. You're going to look at what the pages look like. It's going to give you a sense of how long is the chapter, how much is there words compared to images, what are there going to be graphs, does anything jump out at you? That's the very first thing you're going to do. Okay, now you're going to go back to the beginning of the chapter.
Yes, I think this is a really important stage, because with the survey stage, or what he talks about, flipping through, looking at all the images, headings, all of these things, it primes yourself to actually try to ask questions. So you're way more active in trying to look for what is being taught in this particular chapter. So basically, it improves your focus and improves your attention in terms of what you're scanning through each section.
This time, I'm sorry, I'm going to start over again. You're not going to go to the beginning of the chapter. You're going to go to the end of the chapter. You're going to start at the end of the chapter, and you are going to see at the end of the chapter, did they give you any sort of a quiz? In a lot of textbooks, not all, but in most textbooks, there is going to be some sort of a quiz at the end of each chapter or at the end of each section. So, can anybody tell me why you think it would be a good idea to read the questions in the quiz before you read the chapter?
Oh, me. I think what he was trying to say with this is leading towards the question section, which is the SQ3R method. The question section is whether you raise your own questions, or if you can see the end of chapter quizzes, you can actually try to frame yourself and actively look for the answers to these questions, because it's probably most likely to come up in exams as an example. So that's probably my answer. Let's see what he says.
You know what to look for.
Say it again?
So you know what to look for.
You know what to look for. What you're discovering is, what did the author of this chapter think was so important you were supposed to have gained from the information in the chapter? This is what you're supposed to get out of the chapter. So now when you're reading with a focused attention. Here's what I'm looking for. Now you're going to go back to the beginning of the chapter, and you are going to read the bold print. You're not going to read all the sentences. You're not going to read all the information in the entire chapter. You're just going to go read the bold print. Who can tell me what is the information that's contained in the bold print?
Stuff they want you to remember and see.
Stuff they want you to see. The stuff that they put in bold print for a reason. This is the titles. These are the subtitles. These are the topic headings. These are how they broke down the information within that chapter. In other words, they're going to break it down for you. So now you're kind of understanding how this stuff fits together. You're going to go through one more time before you read the chapter. You're going to read the first and last sentence in each paragraph. The first sentence of a paragraph is the introduction, is a quick overview, if it's well written, and if it's written by a good author. The first sentence of a paragraph gives you an indication as to what the rest of the paragraph is about. And usually the last sentence of the paragraph helps you sum it up. Right now, and I want to stress this, at this point you are not reading this for comprehension. You are reading this for exposure. You're not going to understand this stuff yet. Why? Because you haven't been able to connect the dots. But now you're going to have a map of all the dots. Now what you've got is preview of coming attractions.
Okay, good. So I think he's still on track of what he's talking about, the SQ3R method, but probably a more specific version. What you talk about is still the surveying in terms of flipping through each page. You can be looking through all the bold stuff. You can be looking at the images. You can be looking at the first and last sentence. I think this is still within the same framework. You can do this in your own way, whatever works best for you. And the main thing is to look for these, ask questions to yourself, and also see what questions are already there inside the book itself. It's still the same framework.
Now your brain is set up for here's what you're going to get. Now you read the chapter and take notes on it. Let me tell you, if you follow this formula, you'll only need to go through the chapter like this once. Now, I know what you're thinking. Yes, even you. What you're thinking is, that's a lot of work. Well, compared to what?
Compared to reading it and how to reread it and how to reread it because I'm lost after three paragraphs.
Right, exactly. It's a lot of work compared to just blowing through it and putting your book away and going back to your video game or your TV show. It is not a lot of work compared to cramming for a test and hoping, praying that it's going to stay in your head. And having to stay up all night trying to squeeze this information into your head. Because now what you've done is you've got it as a systematic approach. Remember the old expression that we talked about weeks ago? Repetition is the mother of learning. Repetition is the mother of learning, right?
Okay, maybe a bit of conflicting information here. So he tells you that, okay, you flip through the page and then you look through the questions, the quiz, and then you look at the bold stuff, and then you look at the first and last sentence. And then he tells you, okay, now you read it, then you only need to read it once. So just an innate probably flaw here is whenever you read some stuff, even with that preempting, it's not going to store a lot of information in your brain. If you don't trust me, try to grab this, use this, and go and read a whole chapter, and then close the book and see how much you can actually write down on a blank piece of paper. If you're lucky, like a lot of experiments I've done with my own coaching students, you're lucky to get about 5 to 10%. That's the nature of us learning. If we're just reading, passively reading, that's it. Even if we have preempted our minds with these questions and quizzes and all of these things, if you're not able to close it up and use active recall and actually use it in your own words, explain it in your own words in terms of concepts, and actually use memorization methods for the facts, you're not able to absorb textbooks like a sponge, what we're talking about here. I'm just a little bit curious of how this is. I'd also be curious if you do this as an example and grab a textbook and see what is about the percentage that you get. Comment below. Let's keep going.
Repetition is
The mother of learning.
But what he says here is right. Repetition is the mother of learning. So that is the conflicting thing. If you're only reading it once and you can absorb it and you don't need to read it again, how are you doing the repetition? So that is where I'm a little bit about that.
So what are we doing here? You're giving yourself multiple repeats. You're getting a little bit of a quick overview of what the whole thing looks like. You're finding out what the author thought was the most important stuff to get. So now your radar is on. It's called a reticular activating system. Reticular activating system, a very fancy word for your internal radar. You buy a brand new blue car and suddenly you see blue cars everywhere. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you happen to wear brown shoes that day, and you notice how many of the people are wearing brown shoes that day, that is, your awareness has increased. That is called the Reticular Activating System. And so this is what you want to activate before you turn around and read the chapter. Your awareness is now heightened. Bold print. You're now going to find out what they thought was so important they needed to put it in bold print. These are all your headlines. And now, the first and last sentence of each paragraph, not just the page, of the paragraph, is going to give you a quick overview section by section. Yes, it's slower than just reading through it once, but it is 1,000 times more effective.
Can't wait to try it.
Perfect.
I'd really love to hear what you think. Would this method work for you? Or is it still that we need to go back to the basics, that we need to digest it in our own words and then do active recall that way? Because that is truly how we form memory, how we are able to retain more information in our brain, is to explain it in our own words. Let me know your thoughts. I hope this video has given you some insight, and if you like it, please like and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.